you quote Salwa in your book, right? So maybe you could talk about your book or your work and maybe follow up the reflection. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I want to do a brief presentation about my book and also talk about some of the motivations and inspirations behind me writing my book and some of the themes which I cover. Can we have the... Okay, so a brief synopsis of my book. Basically, A Taste of Honey, as you can see, provides a scholarly exposition on the prominent place that sexuality and erotology enjoy in traditional Islam. The book is divided into two parts. Part 1 presents a critical examination of sexual ethics from an Islamic perspective, that is, and Part 2 consists of a concise treatise on the art of lovemaking and seduction. The central aim of this book argues that Islam is a sexually enlightened religion which teaches that sensuality should not be devoid of spirituality. The book also argues that the loss of sacred sensuality afflicting modern-day society can be reclaimed by revival of the classic erotological tradition. And I also talk about the sources that I used in terms of to get for my book. It's primarily a compilation. I do some analysis of classic erotological literature. It was primarily a compilation of earlier scholars, what they've spoken about in terms of erotology, and then I bring my own analysis and try and talk about things which I think are applicable to the modern day reader. In terms of some of the themes which I address in my book. Oops, wrong one. Okay. Alright, so these are some of the themes and topics I wanted to kind of talk about. The first one, as Claire mentioned, I studied at Azhar in Cairo in Egypt, and I was quite surprised that even amongst a lot of the Muslim scholars that was teaching me there, not many of them knew about Islam's Islamic heritage in terms of regarding erotology. And even in the West, in England, that's where I'm from, not many people know about, obviously, erotology. So what I wanted to do was to write a book which introduces the lay Muslim in terms of understanding Islam's heritage and Muslim contribution which they've made to the art of lovemaking and sexual studies and things like that. And I didn't really just want to do a compilation like the earlier scholars have done. I wanted to basically write a modern rendition. So I wanted to, again, following the likes of Imam al-Suyuti, I wanted to list a lot of what the great scholars have written about erotology, and obviously some like sexual techniques which hopefully people can find benefit from. But also I wanted to talk about some contemporary issues afflicting primarily the Muslim community, which obviously the earlier scholars didn't talk about. For example, the issue of cunnilingus and fellatio oral sex. There is some mention of cunnilingus, but in terms of fellatio, that's not really discussed. And this is a hot topic, especially within the Muslim community, in terms of understanding whether such acts are, again, within the confines of marriage, whether they're halal, as permitted or not permitted. So I wanted to kind of talk about that and talk about the Islamic perspective in regards to that particular issue. Also, I wanted to talk about the different types of female orgasm, female sexuality, and mental stimulation. I'm aware I'm short for time, so I'm going to be quite quick. I'll go to the next slide. And these are, again, some of the other topics I wanted to address. And I think it's very important for the modern day reader to understand, first and foremost, the differences between classic erotology and modern day sexology. Some people use the terms interchangeably, but generally there's a difference between the two in the sense where erotology is seen to be one that is a study that is from a personal perspective and drawn from experiences, whereas sexology is kind of seen in the Western world, seen to be an objective study in terms of understanding sexual behaviour. So it's important that, because people use the terms interchangeably, it's important that people understand the differences in terms of these two disciplines. Also, I wanted to kind of address some of the reason for the decline of erotology and some of the benefits of studying erotology. And again, another thing which I think earlier, question asked earlier in the morning, was understanding the difference between classic Arabic and modern day standard Arabic. So some of the terms that are used by the classic erotologists are not the same as how modern day Arabs use such words. And I'm going to give a couple of demonstrations if I've got time. But again, I just wanted to address that and talk about the differences in terms of understanding Arabic, how it's understood in the context of the Arabs who wrote those erotological texts. Okay, and this is another issue that I wanted to kind of address. Again, like I said, there's an issue especially amongst conservative and so-called traditional Muslims who do not want to acknowledge the Islam's or the Muslim contribution towards this topic, so I kind of wanted to address that and also discuss whether erotology is considered to be a quote-unquote Islamic science. We know of many great Muslim scholars like Imam Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, who wrote at least 24 books on erotology. He's a revered Muslim scholar, but for some reason, a lot of his works are translated into English and propagated to the Muslim masses, but in terms of his works in regards to erotology, it's not really discussed. I also want to talk about his contribution, why erotology could be considered to be a traditional Islamic science. And again, just talking about the subgenres of erotology, there's generally four. Peter Frank, who was a researcher, I think, from America, he spoke about two and I've demarcated to another two, so I'll talk about four subgenres. The first one, which I'll quickly go through, is a philosophy-themed erotological treatise. The second is medically-themed erotological treatise. The third is sexually arousing, or you could classify them as pornographic. And the fourth is traditionalist or Islamic erotological literature. And basically, the latter, which is my book is based upon, is talking about the art of sexual love and lovemaking, but from an Islamic perspective. And then, just a quick overview about what do I mean by Islamic erotology. A lot of the great Muslim erotologists like Jalaluddin al-Suyuti and you could argue Muhammad al-Nafsawi, who wrote The Perfumed Garden, a lot of their inspiration was from the Quran and the prophetic traditions, the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who spoke in the countless he spoke about how a man should treat his woman and the duties that a husband owes to his wife, and also he spoke about female sexuality. And this was the inspiration for a lot of the Muslim erotologists to write their treatises. So I kind of wanted to address that and give examples of, for example, honey, which I use the euphemism dhuql al-sayla, which the Prophet ﷺ used in the tradition when he was speaking to a woman. This is a sexual euphemism for sexual relations, and I'll kind of address that and talk about that. And the last, 2 minutes. Okay, the last point is the hadith of Jabir, which is considered by Imam al-Suyuti to be the foundation of Islamic erotology. And in one of his texts about erotology, he spoke about the numerous benefits that this hadith in and of itself is concise enough and sufficient in terms of for later Muslim scholars who want to write about, or Muslim writers who wanted to write about erotology. So that's a quick overview. Hopefully I'm within time and hopefully we have some more questions.
Thank you very much, Habeeb. What I liked about your book, Salwasbon, is of course you write in English, but in the way you're writing the book, it goes back to an ancient tradition of Jama. And this is also what Salwa does with the language. She goes back to the ancient language and to the classical language. So in the way you write the book itself, in its form itself, both of you try to really reuse the language, and this is really beautiful, I think, in the modern times. And also, both of you have a really feminine perspective, because I've read your articles, and you always go back to the pleasure of women. And Salwa, of course, has a really feminine perspective.